launches initiative to transform Nigeria into $1 trillion economy by 2030.
We have been uniquely blessed and positioned to change the trajectory of our nation.
52nd Ordinary Session of ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council underway. Regional security tops agenda.
And Senate constitutes ad hoc committee to conduct holistic investigation of oil and gas industry.
Even the issues of the act, the PIA, we must look back at the PIA. We have a right as a parliament. Don't we have the right? We have the right to look back and see whether the thing is working for us or not.
Nigeria today, we shall take a look at increasing oil production in Nigeria.
All right, now the nation's black gold appears to be in need of redemption. Reports indicate that Nigeria is losing about 400,000 to 600,000 barrels of crude oil to oil theft and illegal bunkering, and that's estimated at 2.2 trillion naira as at 2023. Indeed,
data from the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, suggests Nigeria's oil production swings between 1.46 million barrels per day to about 1.7 million, while the latest data from the Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission revealed the country's daily oil production stands at 1.25 million barrels per day, and this is in spite of efforts at tackling pipeline vandalism and oil theft. Conflicting figures, Victor, and of course industry players are also not satisfied with those figures, and they insist that Nigeria's potential for crude oil production can extend to 2 million barrels per day if only insecurity is checked. And I mean, this is not the first time people are raising that concern, really. But that is why the NNPC Limited, that is, on Tuesday at the Oil and Gas Energy Week, declared a state of emergency on crude oil production. And according to it, it is going to war against oil production challenges. Now, the Group Managing Director of NNPCL, Mele Kyari, maintains the war would enable NNPC and its partners to promptly overcome all identified challenges, create more effective and efficient production, and reduce delays in procurement processes. All right, and still quoting the NNPC Limited, part of the plans to boost production is also to replace all crude oil pipelines built more than 40 years ago and introduce a rig sharing program with partners to ensure that the lifespan of the rigs, of course, is 4 to 5 years. Now, Nigeria's oil and gas sector is considered the black gold of a nation's economy and reputed to be the live wire of its revenue, but its oil production outlook is under tremendous pressure, inundated with barrage of issues ranging from social, environmental, security and technical challenges. And I'm sure that, Victor, when the Dangote refinery was announced, everyone, marketers, Nigerians, everyone, had the hope that the refinery or the emergence of Dangote refinery will bring down at least to some bearable minimum the price of PMS, and we all know that rising from 200 naira per liter to nearly 700 naira per liter in some places, of course, after the removal of fuel subsidy will generate some, concern. But the fear that the lack of access to local crude oil may also be a long hurdle to getting, even cheaper PMS. That's regardless of the Dangote's input into the system. But The Dangote Industries Limited has another hurdle as it recently accused the international oil companies, IOCs, operating in Nigeria of undermining the operations and profit margins of Africa's largest refinery. By the way, also here is the largest single train refinery in the world, you know, and they're asking for high premiums for domestically produced crude oil.
All right, so, and the OPEC, that's the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and allies, have set Nigeria's crude oil production quota at 1.5 million barrels per day, that's MPBD, until December 2025. But Nigeria has continued to, you know, put nothing less than 4 billion naira into reviving, you know, our refineries, and of course the gap still subsists, and that you know, became evident in the conflicting, you know, figures of our production capacity that we just read out to you. And the question will, you know, persist: what can we do to shore up production level? And indeed, that's the precise question that the MD of the NNPC, you know, was asking. What can we do, you know, to shore up production level? And is Nigeria ready? Are we ready to really exceed, you know, the expectations that, of course, meet our production quota or even exceed it, and you know, begin to derive the expectations that Nigeria, you know, have been hoping for? And so today on Good Morning Nigeria, we will look at, you know, issues around you know, the stepping up of our oil production lately in Nigeria, or how we can increase our oil production capacity. And that's the thrust of our conversation this morning. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Always we welcome you to the program and we thank you for joining us. Victor?
Well, you asked if we are ready, if we can achieve it. Well, I'll say all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And I'm quoting, I think, Walt Disney. Well, I'm Victor, so thank you for joining us. We are reaching you on the network service of the NTA. Newspaper review will come later, precisely after the news highlights from Olajide Bello. Good morning, Olajide.
Good morning, Victor. Good morning, Claire. And the red and black actually complement each other. You guys are looking top-notch.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nigeria, and here is the morning news. The federal government has launched a new initiative to establish an operating model and framework for economic and financial inclusion to transform Nigeria into a $1 trillion economy by 2030. Vice President Kashim Shettima said the initiative symbolizes the commitment of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration to enhance financial and economic inclusion across Nigeria.
This initiative to recognize the weight of your responsibility. We have been uniquely blessed and positioned to change the trajectory of our nation from a nation rich in potentials to reality. You have all been entrusted with the vital national assignment, and I have full confidence that you will bring your best efforts to ensure its success.
The Senate has set up another committee to conduct a holistic investigation of the oil and gas industry. Among terms of reference of the committee, being chaired by Senate Leader Apayemi Bamidele, are to check parameters used by NNPC Limited to examine shipments, direct sale, direct purchase arrangements, as well as timeline for completion of repair of government-owned refineries.
Part of the investigation should be why one of our refineries is producing, but the market in Nigeria either is blocked, frustrated, or whatever. He has to go and sell it outside.
No, it's that even the issues of the act, the PIA, we must look back at the PIA. We have a right as a parliament. Don't we have the right? We have the right to look back and see whether the thing is working for us or not.
President Bola Tinubu has charged the executive and legislative arms of government to create more channels for Nigerians to voice their concerns and participate in policy formulation. This was his message to the Legislative Open Week organized by the House of Representatives.
By opening our doors, we invite scrutiny and dialogue, which are essential for improving governance and strengthening democratic institutions.
We must engage through town hall meetings because not all citizens have the means to come to Abuja.
The necessity for engagement and talking with the people at all times is an absolute necessary ingredient for a healthy democratic journey.
The 52nd Ordinary Session of ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council at the ministerial level is underway in Abuja. The participants include ministers and ambassadors of ECOWAS member states to harmonize viewpoints on issues of regional security in the sub-region and the Sahel.
It is therefore crucial for every country within ECOWAS, including those in the Sahelian belt, to understand that the fight against terrorism is not the burden of a few, but a collective responsibility. We must therefore remain united and demonstrate unvacillating commitment and resolve to safeguard the lives and futures of our citizens and community.
Those are the highlights of the news at this time. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Victor after this break. Don't go anywhere.
The federal government of Nigeria wants vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
The Honorable Minister of Works, His Excellency Senator Nweze David Umahi, CON, cordially invites members of the public to the stakeholders' engagement on the Sokoto and Kebbi States 378-kilometer and Niger and Kwara State 313-kilometer segment of the 1,000-kilometer Sokoto-Badagry Superhighway, as well as the Nasarawa, Kogi, Benue State and FCT 284-kilometer segment of the 477-kilometer Cross River Southeast North Central Apo Abuja Superhighway, scheduled as follows. For Sokoto and Kebbi State, Northwest Section, Wednesday 3rd of July 2024. Venue, State Banquet Hall, Benin Kebbi, Kebbi State. Time is 12 noon. For Niger and Kwara State, North Central Section, Thursday 4th of July 2024. Venue, State Banquet Hall, Ilorin, Kwara State. Time is 12 noon. For Nasarawa State, Kogi State, Benue State and FCT, North Central Section, Friday 5th of July 2024. Venue, Nasarawa State Exco Chambers. Invited guests include governors of concerned state, Senate and Federal House of Representative Committees on Works, Honorable Minister of Line Ministries, Emirs, Royal Fathers, professionals and technocrats, Nigerian Communication Commission and major telecommunication service providers, Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, Nigerian Society of Engineers, and other relevant stakeholders and media. We count on your cooperation in the renewed hope agenda of enhancing national connectivity and transportation flexibility for economic development. Please accept the esteemed regard of the Honorable Minister of Works, Announcer Yakubu Adam Kofamata, Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Works.
A good farmer is a craftsman of the highest order. It is said, great farmer, great nation. No farmer, no nation. Yes, let's set the ball rolling to build that great Nigeria where good food is in abundance, affordable and easily accessible. The Renewed Hope Initiative, RHI, an initiative of the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, CON, is aligning with the vision and aspiration of the administration of President Bola Tinubu, GCFR, and is organizing the Every Home a Garden competition. The competition is under the scope of agriculture of the Renewed Hope Hope initiative. For the competition, women are encouraged to immediately plant a garden at home, such that the harvest can provide adequate food on their table and enough to give their neighbor. This competition is open to only women. She must be a first-time farmer. The garden must be in her home, and it is open to women in every state of the Federation and the FCT. Interested participants should do a 30-second video and a picture of the garden which indicates its location to the office of the first ladies of their various states. The winner of this competition will be announced in December 2024, and the winner of the competition goes home with 20 million naira. Women, join the train. Be part of the food revolution in Nigeria. What are you waiting for? Let's get to work. This message is by the Renewed Hope Initiative, RHI, an initiative of the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, CON.
We must all join hands to work hard so that we build a country for our grandchildren.
My hope is that we develop as a nation where every citizen is given his due right. There is transparency, honesty, and integrity.
Put the interests of this country first and foremost. Interest of Nigeria is being one nation, one people.
The need, if I mean, to put things right, things that have gone wrong before, to try and put right, for this, for the love of country.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and it's live on the network service. Time now to take a look at the highlights of course, the trending stories on Newspaper Review. Don't go away.
Right, and we're set for the newspaper review. Chukwudi Okoliubaja, who will do the honors, is here.
Yeah.
Good morning.
How are you, Victor? Good morning.
I'm all right.
Claire, how are you doing?
Good morning.
The first thing I noticed was a rage of red. You know I didn't put out any telephone call to anybody concerning headgear. So I don't know what you guys are. I'm not a lizard. You can be red-headed.
Well, just since you mentioned it, Chukwudi.
Yes.
Since you mentioned it, actually, my wear this morning was deliberate.
Okay.
And it was just to appreciate a young man. We met yesterday, in one of our, meetings, with our GM. And the young man is in his probably late 20s or early 30s. And he identified us. His analysis of the mission and vision of NTA was impeccable. His understanding of the concept of Good Morning Nigeria was captivating. And I asked him, I said, young man, why aren't you distracted by the digital, platforms and all the other stations? And he said, because I know what I get, the substance I get by watching Good Morning Nigeria. And he doesn't miss Good Morning Nigeria. And I was fascinated. And I asked him, what's your name? He said his name is Michael Amedu. Michael Amedu works as a photographer to the governor of Nasarawa State. Yes. And he's from Benue. And to be precise, he's from Idoma. So I said to Michael this morning, I was going to be adorned in an Idoma outfit just to honor him. Claire, and so that's why I'm like this.
Now, you just reeled this out. You don't know how much you have touched somebody's heart out there. And when we talk about human connection, people go for big things. Thanks for making this Boys' Day. Besides that, I want to express happiness that is within the industry. I would have been heartbroken if after analyzing all NTA stands for, he is not affiliated to the kind of work we do.
In fact, he said he was his PA on strategic communications.
Okay.
Yes. So that's
and he chooses to run with the elders.
Yes. I didn't know you could do that. I will now have to work towards fascinating you maybe more often. Let's get to the papers.
That's okay.
And I'll begin with the Nigerian pilot. The screaming headline here reads, "Shameful East-West Road. Reps want contract revoked." And it has 4 riders. Reps ask Umahi to revoke East-West Road contract over poor execution. Say contractors. Rock Result Nigeria Limited has performed abysmally. That contract should be re-awarded to company with expertise, capacity. Express worry that East-West Road has been in a dilapidated state for years. Okay, and another story that I'll take to is NIMC dismisses fake national ID cards, soon to unveil multi-purpose one. That story is on page 4. And okay, let me leave that for the Nigerian pilot and head towards the Daily Sun. The Daily Sun leads with NEMA issues flooding alert in 31 states. Warns of high, moderate deluge. That's page 6. Again, Discos raise tariff from 206.80 per kilowatts to 209.5 kilowatts. I guess they're talking about band A, and you find that on page 23. At the bottom of the front page of the Daily Sun, petroleum producers raise the alarm on crude oil importation, say Nigeria may be unable to meet domestic refinery demand. That story is on page 25. And finally, for me on the Daily Sun, terrorist attacks. Senate identifies Lake Chad, Sambisa as Boko Haram hotspots. Urges security agencies to deploy modern technology. That one is on page 26, Claire.
And the New Telegraph has a lot of interesting stories on the front page. I'll just quickly take them. But the lead story is Akpabio blames Goza suicide attacks on security intelligence failure. Two riders on that page. And then we have just trending above that is Mr. President, Dogara, Mr. President saying Nigeria needs collective efforts to surmount challenges. The story is on page 2. Federal government launches initiative to transform Nigeria is also there. And then this one from EFCC, there are plans to instigate protest, quotes national uprising is on page 3. And there you have Lagos calls for calm as downpour floods Lagos. That was yesterday. Reps panel invites PAMSEC accused of sexual harassment by minister's aide is also there. Court orders closure of 2 firms linked to $9.6 billion PNID scam. It's also there. Southeast Caucus, NAS Caucus begs Tinubu to release Nnamdi Kanu, also trending on the front page. And so let me just quickly bring in Chukwudi Okoli-Igboaja. Chukwudi, I don't know which of these stories. Now let's start with the President of the Senate. Telling us what I believe is a known issue, failure of security intelligence.
I was almost going to say, why hold it back? He was stating the obvious. The counting of that headline, really, I found it interesting. The Senate President is identifying those in the theater of operation already know what the issues are. So what one would expect now is, if you're sure that security intelligence failure is responsible, then you summon some people to ask why there was a gap in monitoring. That's it. Because at the end of the day, it's about lives, saving lives. You understand? So that's how I would want to approach that. The new news, the new information which you and I seek as journalists is missing there. So it's almost an empty statement there. What do we now do? Who didn't do what? And something happened because that thing did not get done. And what do you do to that person? You can't just talk in a void.
What was responsible for the failure?
Exactly.
Is it absence of facilities or gap or somebody somewhere didn't do?
We are not going to have a note of indictment on anyone.
Exactly.
But we must always ask questions. Some people could tell you, look, we did the best we could. If we had this equipment or that equipment, we could have done better. It advances the cause of keeping Nigerians safer. But you must advance the talk and the action, not identifying some.
We discussed this extensively on Good Morning Nigeria just a couple of days ago. And we arrived somewhere with the guests that we had on the program.
Yes.
But shameful East-West Road, reps want contract revoked.
First of all, the East-West Road is like a cat. It has 9 lives. It doesn't die. All the controversy, surrounding it make you think of it as the tortoise. The tortoise is an animal that even outwits the elephant. But the point is this. I find out that in the typical Nigerian argument, people argue from how they think or what they feel. But these are our lawmakers. That's what makes it different. So what is their finding that has made them say, revoke it, give it to another person and all that? And you're talking to a Dave Umahi who just a few days ago revoked contract for, the road running from, Edo Axis, what do you call it now, just before Okwila, all that access, fine. So it's not as if the minister is not prone to action concerning this. You're not telling him anything he's not used to. How do you now synergize concerning an East-West Road you think is not meeting the expectations of people who eventually be the users of the road? You must concretize the reason you want this done. When that becomes impeccable, nobody can fault it. For crying out loud, the minister
I guess if you read into the details, I'm sure you'll find the reasons.
Yes.
Okay, NEC hikes electricity tariff for Band A customers again from 206.80 kilowatts per hour to 209.50 kilowatts per hour for users in Band A category. It has come again.
Maybe they are being rewarded for now having 24 hours. Because the minister, Adebayo, said there that actually Band A people are now enjoying 24 hours electricity. It has actually improved in my suburb. Villagers like me, we don't live in Abuja like you big guys. So, fine.
We are actually on the same axis.
Claire, you don't have to say everything.
No, I have to.
Chukudi was just being Chukudi.
No, I have to make that clarification.
It's
so
okay,
you don't
my dear.
group me.
Okay, back to the substance.
Dress me in borrowed
back to the substance now. I read that 1 trillion naira is budgeted for, handling power issues and all that. Then the minister observed that Nigerians spent 20 trillion naira on fuel and generators. So the self-energy provision is even beating the budgetary provision and all that. You understand? At the end of the day, we want constant, regular power supply. People will pay. People will pay when they receive service. That's what I found out. When I went to Cotonou the other day to help resolve a car issue between somebody who bought and somebody who was supposed to take it in, I asked, your electricity you seem to pay more than Nigerians. So it's very steady. We don't mind. It's very steady.
I don't know. I know you have one on flood, especially in Lagos yesterday. I had calls from people in Lagos about floods and all that. And you have one on leadership that talks on ASU. Can you quickly review?
Quickly, let's talk about the flood. I get tired. I'm not very, very, very robust when it comes to talking about this annual ritual of announcing floods. I want to hear, this was the cooperation between a United Nations agency and Nigeria in combating gully erosion somewhere, making sure that actions that were taken to make sure that culverts are provided by even people who have residence close to the road properly, so that these flooding is reduced. Otherwise, they would always issue their alerts and all that. Fine, it's become a ritual. We want to know what action happened between the last alert and the recent one. That's more meaningful to us as people. Again, another, you begin to say the media is according a lot of space to this ASU thing and all that. It becomes another ding-dong affair. They say the government has not kept their side of the bargain. So let them keep talking. Yes.
Forever?
Well, you are making it headlines forever. So why would they not
all right, Chooks the boy. When did I stop calling you Chooks the boy?
Because I'm now becoming a man.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, please don't go away. The conversation will begin presently.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand. We make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we are more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Name a reason why a lady might choose to date a broke guy.
Because of his potentials. Because she has the money.
Misa, why are you afraid?
I just can't wait.
You just can't wait for me to ask the question. Okay, I'm ready for you. Name something a person wouldn't want to be seen doing.
Gossiping.
So you normally do gossip?
I do. Only see her calling when she's needing. I only see her falling when she's tripping.
Wasi, 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 oppressive family, so you're never the
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
We continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country that God has kept, together as one indivisible entity.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. To begin our conversation on increasing oil production in Nigeria, here is a background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Presently, Nigeria produces 1.5 million barrels of crude, and according to the chief executive of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC, Mele Kyari, the major impediment to achieving more remains the inability of players to act in a timely manner. And that explains why a state of emergency was declared on production in Nigeria's oil and gas industry, as Africa's largest oil producer struggles to boost output, believing that Nigeria needs to take urgent action to address the challenges that have plagued the industry for years. Remain oil theft and pipeline vandalism, which have long plagued the country's upstream oil and gas industry, driving major players out of the country and often resulting in force majeure at the key crude oil export terminals. Lack of investment in the capacity has made Nigeria the biggest laggard in crude oil production in OPEC Plus alliance, and due to the underproduction, OPEC even reduced the quota for Nigeria's oil production last year. Now, with the state of emergency declared, it is believed that the war will help the country and its partners speedily clear all identified obstacles to effective and efficient production, such as delays in procurement processes, which have become the challenge in the industry. Part of the moves now to make is to replace all old crude oil pipelines built over 4 decades ago and also introduce a rig sharing program with its partners to ensure that production rigs stay in the country for between 4 to 5 years, which is the standard practice in most climes. And for the Chief Executive Officer of NNPC Limited, there is the need for all the players in the industry to collaborate towards reducing the cost of production and boosting production to target levels. According to a detailed analysis of assets revealed, Nigeria can conveniently produce 2 million barrels of crude oil per day without deploying new rigs. And so, how soon will this declared state of emergency be felt by the ordinary Nigerians? Guests on the program will surely provide answers to these and more shortly.
Ajayi, thank you. We do hope that our guests will provide the solutions to the quest, of course, to boost our oil production, and we have no doubt that they have the capacity to, give us a direction. So let me quickly welcome the guests right here in the studio. And once again, our topic is on how to increase our oil production capacity in Nigeria. And we have Emeka Ene, who is the Board of Trustees, Chair of the Society of Petroleum Engineers Nigeria. Indeed, he's engineer Emeka Ene, and former chairman of PITAN, CEO of the All Data Energy Group. And we're very glad to have you back in our studio.
Thank you very much for having me here.
And we also have Demola Henry Adigun, who's an energy consultant that supports energy sector in the areas of governance and capacity building. He has also supported policy development in the oil and gas sector and team leader of the Facility for All Sector Transparency and Reforms, as well as which is, I gather, is an intervention targeted at reducing corruption in the oil sector, and you do that by promoting efficiency and strengthening governance of the sector. Quite an uphill task, if you ask me. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, and let me also introduce another petroleum engineer, but he's in the academic, he's an academic rather, Dr. Abubakar Akali, who joins us and is senior lecturer at the Bayes University here in Abuja. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, let me start with Engineer, and this morning, Victor and I, we're reading out numbers of, our production capacity at the moment. We have 1.7, million barrels per day. We've heard 1.5. But there's also a report that indicates we are still at 1.2. So maybe you will start by giving us maybe clarification, if you do have. Where are we at the moment?
Well, you know, the delivery of oil is a chain. So it depends on where you're measuring it. So usually you're going to have a disparity or variance. The bottom line is that we're not producing what we should be producing. And I think this is what the GCEO was alluding to. Potentially we should be producing more. Whether it is 1.5, 1.2 or 1.7, we are not producing what we should be producing.
That's at least at 2 points.
Beyond
Over
2
2 points.
I mean, you've hit it before. We're not there where we were before many years ago. That is the bottom line. And so when we get fixated on numbers, where we have to ask ourselves, where are we measuring? What are we measuring in the first place? But we tend to lose sight of the big picture. What is the whole purpose of this measurement? We are not performing optimally. We are not growing.
Is our production capacity, is it increasing? Are we recording any increment as at now?
Well, you know, again, it depends on where you're measuring, what you're measuring. Yeah, OPEC has given us a 1.5 benchmark, and at times we are below that. At times we are above that. But everybody in the industry recognizes that we are not producing potentially what we should be producing. At the wellhead, we have certain production levels that are being measured. At the terminals, it's a different situation. The infrastructure is aging, so there are, of course, pipeline losses. There are other losses that are undocumented losses. And ultimately, what matters is the market. The market is not receiving what we're supposed to receive.
So we don't know what we are producing. That's what I get from you. We don't have uniform data. We don't have one data that will say, okay, this is as at today, as at second quarter 2024. This is what we're producing. Is that it, Engineer Ene? So that we can
take that word from my mouth, because the thing is, it depends on where you're measuring it. If you go to the operator, he has his own production figures. When you aggregate them, right, they may not add up. 1 + 1 is 2, but if you have 1 + 1 and you're getting a different number, then you begin to worry.
It's the same thing we are saying.
But when you emphasize that it depends on where you're measuring from,
yes.
Should that cause the kind of disparity that we have? We're not talking about 1 or 2 or 100, we're talking about hundreds of thousands in difference.
Maybe we are asking the wrong question. And you see, it's when you start to count your pennies, when you start looking at your change, the period of say, okay, just keep the change. These days, you count your change. Why? Because there is an underlying economic desire to count all the numbers. So today, it's important that our production targets or deliverables are higher than what they have been, simply because we have a need, an urgent need to grow our economy.
Okay, Mr. Adigun, this is our story this morning, and I'm not just reading. Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) Limited suggests Nigeria's oil production swings between 1.46 million barrels per day to about 1.7 million. And from what has been circulating in the media all through yesterday and all that, this was attributed to the MD of NNP, that's Mele Kyari himself, indicating an increase in our oil production capacity. How do you read what is happening?
It's a funny state. So there's capacity, which is what you can. Then there's actual, what you are. Then there's what the market receives, which is actually what really matters most. So if you can say you're producing 2 million barrels per day, you can claim 2.3 million barrels per day, but you're not producing them to go into the air. You're producing for a market. The purpose of the crude oil business is to sell, and you have to make revenue for it for Nigeria. Now, if you're producing 1.5, or 1.6, or 1.7, and the market is only getting 1.25, then what you are producing for the market is actually 1.25. So that's taking away the ambiguity of the way the figures are presented. So I can say, look, Nigeria has the capacity to produce this number of horsepower, but what does it actually bring out? So the capacity is different. And again, it's part of the problems we have when we have NNPC Limited being the person giving us the figures. Things haven't changed. the purpose of the PIA was to ensure that the regulatory capacity was strengthened, and then NPC moves out of the way, becomes a commercial company. Now, it's not Mr. Kiari should tell us this. It should be Komolafe telling us what the production figures are. He's the regulator. That is where the numbers should be. He has the overview of what we are producing. And this is the key concept of what has impeded the sector. When you have roles that are not clearly defined, I mean, the law is defined clearly, but in the performance of the roles, I was watching yesterday about a state of emergency, and I'm thinking, no, it's not your role. You're a commercial operator. You're not the minister, you're not policy. You do your business. Get MPC working, get profit, make it profit making. The minister, or the ministers, as they are now, don't talk about policies. They have the overview of sector. They talk about the state of emergency. The regulator, which is both NUPRC in terms of crude oil production, talks about, okay, what we need to do to strengthen delivery. You do your work as a commercial entity. But these are the legacy problems where, part of the reasons why Nigeria's production are stifled. I must say that I heard Eja Komolafe saying the rig count has increased. So rig count now is 34 from 10, from 7. But rig count is good, and it's an indication of your production capacity. The more
But what are you reading? What are you reading in terms of, what is available, our crude oil capacity?
What am I reading?
Yes, are we experiencing, are we increasing, or we are just where we were before? Yes.
Well, we are declining. It's a decline. We survived the decline, so there are different declines. There's decline in production, which can be occasioned by many things. Crude oil prices not being as high as they were before. There was a time in Nigeria, we had 73 rigs in Nigeria. There was a time we had 8, there was a time we had 6. And rig counts are an indicator of how much crude you're producing, because it's rigs that produce crude. And you're exploring or mining, so that's what happens. But so we're declining. But I heard yesterday that we're now 34, which means there might be growth, but it hasn't got to the market yet. So what gets to the market has not improved. Maybe there's increasing oil thefts. Maybe there's increasing vandalism on the pipelines. Maybe there's increasing leakages. I'm saying some maybes. But what the market is getting is not improving.
All right, thank you very much. Let me get Dr. Akali involved in this. Clearly, at least I think we can agree on something, that Nigeria is not performing to its capacity when it comes to oil production. We have a capacity of 2.2, but we don't get there. Now, many have attributed this to crude oil theft. And this has been for as long as I can remember. So why does it seem that the same crude oil theft cannot be dealt with for so long?
Thank you very much. I think, for me, to be honest, Nigeria can potentially produce more than 2.2 per day. I think I'm being very ambitious here. I think Nigeria can potentially produce 4 million barrels per day, if you ask me, with the right, infrastructure, with the right, framework. The problem is that, we allow these issues to, persist for too long. And I think the right commitment, the right political will has not been applied. Now, as you rightly mentioned, the major problem for me, to oil production is, the violence in the Niger Delta, is the oil theft, much more than even the cane infrastructure, because if you're talking of the cane infrastructure, you're talking of the pipelines, these are actually equipment that you can even establish their service life. You can establish the service life of a pipeline. Yes. So the problem is more to do with the violence in the Niger Delta. It's more to do with the oil theft. What have the authorities done to the oil theft menace? The NNPC, COO talked about state of emergency. Okay, that's good. At least it's a wake-up call, to say, look, there is a problem. But how do we fight this war? You see, for me, I see no reason why oil theft should not be declared as terrorism in Nigeria, for me. For me, if we are really committed to giving these investors, the right confidence, All thieves should be declared terrorists. Absolutely. You see, a bandit or a conventional terrorist targets individuals. The oil thief actually targets the whole nation. And this is an issue that could potentially bring down the whole country. So there should be a legislation on this. Our legislators, our federal legislators, even the executive itself, talks about oil theft. This is the major problem. It amounts to begging the question if we should continue to go in cycles, declaring a state of emergency, declaring war. How do we fight this war? The investors are living in drops, and they want that confidence. They want that encouragement. They want to see, a nation, a country, an investment climate that is ready to secure their investments. As we speak, I'm not sure, I don't know, but I cannot remember anybody convicted of oil theft in this country. There are no specific laws on oil theft, but there are laws on election. There are laws on, matters that are not as important as this is the live wire of the economy. The government should have special laws for oil theft. And as I keep saying, oil theft is terrorism. Oil thieves should be declared as terrorists and treated accordingly. The government should have special laws on oil theft, special courts. If we should have special courts, special tribunals, okay, to treat election cases with dispatch. I see no reason why till date, despite the fact that at some point there were 5,543 illegal connections to the trunk line. Every now and then, new illegal connections, new illegal pipelines, new illegal refineries are discovered. They are discovered, and the investor is there, and you expect this investor to be happy under this general state of violence and insecurity and uncertainty.
There's so many, Dr. Khalid, there's so many issues, even affecting, apart from the insecurity, oil theft, vandalism, pipeline vandalism, of course we have the cooking pots, in the Niger Delta, and all that, oil bunkering and all that. But we will look at those issues presently. I wanted Engineer Ene to also look at, because right now we've all agreed that we are not even, we don't know whether what is in the market, is not encouraging. And I'm wondering if that is so, how are we? How will the country, realize the fund to fund the budget, the 2024 budget, which is pegged on a production capacity of 1.78 million barrels per day? What's likely to happen if at this stage we are not even making progress? Okay,
maybe I'm going to go philosophical a little bit.
No, please, make it calm down so that everybody...
No, I'm saying,
yes, okay.
Actually I want to calm down. When I say philosophical, let's understand ourselves as Nigerians. I'll give you a few examples. IBP, and that's I better pass my neighbor, right? When I say I better pass my neighbor, everybody knows what I mean. If you're not Nigerian, you may not understand, right? So what does that mean? Necessity is the mother of invention. Nigerians find creative ways to solve problems that are practical, right in your face. They find a way, I better pass my neighbor. Or mouth. Oga manage it like that. Yeah. So we find ways to survive in less than the best conditions, less than perfect conditions. We find a way around it. Yeah. Or CAC, that is a chop and clean mouth. Yeah. In other words, we are all driven by self-interest many times. You see, we have to understand ourselves, yeah? And this is the reason why the Super Eagles won the Olympic thing in 1996 or something like that. Mass attack, mass defense. Let's play street football. Let's play our own type of football. So if we are going to meet our budget targets, we need to first understand that solving Nigeria's problem is the responsibility of Nigerians. It has to be. That's the only way we can survive. And that's the only way we have actually survived, by working around these problems and not thinking that our solution lies somewhere else. Yeah? So first is, if there's a problem, it's either some things that need to drop or some things you need to adopt, new things you need to adopt. Sustainability is one thing. How do we sustain growth in our industry? One of the things that we tend to ignore, one of our strengths, is local content. We see local content as a negative, but actually it's a very strong strength. And if it's such a bad thing, how come other countries are copying our model? From Ghana to Senegal to East Africa, they are copying our model. Because you're building capacity locally. And we saw it in COVID. In COVID, nobody could fly. You couldn't fly somebody in from Aberdeen or from Houston. And what happened? The industry was sustained during that period by purely local content efforts.
But these are two different, I mean, yes.
You were talking about finance now, yeah? I'll give you another acronym, PSS. Pay small, small. Everybody knows what that means. Yeah? Book me down. You see, so modularity in terms of solving our issues, finance-wise and co, is a strength. The ability to be able to walk around and build problems from a modular approach, solving the problem. If you look across the oil and gas industry, for example, you know, we look at the PMS thing, people are talking about gas now, trying to use gas as a means for locomotion and all these things. Understand one thing, sustainability is key. Local content is a strength. Nigerian companies are all over the place. Nigerians are working in Saudi Aramco, helping them increase their production, right? And they're being treated like illegal children back home. So we need to understand that local content is actually a strength. And in other words, there's an announcement for a production war room. Local players, both from the independent producers, from PETAN, the local content group, we need to all be together to set production targets, challenge the process, and I can tell you that production will increase. That's sustainability.
What happens to Nigeria's membership? If you set your own target, is it going to be at par with the OPEC? Because OPEC has already given us a target of 1.5.
The potential, you don't need to drill new wells. The thing is that we're in a declining business. The moment you start producing a reservoir, it starts to decline on you. You didn't put the oil there, but think about it as even it's in a tank. The moment you start sucking the oil from that tank, and you're not putting any new oil in, the level will start to reduce. So we're in a declining business. So you need to keep working it. We all got up this morning, we took our bath, we brushed our teeth, and for those who are not fasting, well, you ate some food. If you're not sustaining your business is going to decline faster. You will decline, you deteriorate faster if you're not eating. It's the same principle. But how for do? Again, it's another acronym if you like. Yeah, we have what it takes to sustain and grow our production internally. If you look at the last marginal bid round, yeah, the players, the first marginal bid round, a lot of operators went across the world trying to raise money. I can tell you that 90% of the companies that went to production sourced the money locally and the expertise locally. I can tell you that. All the major marginal field players. So therefore they formed the IPPG. So our solution lies internally. Sustainability is very key. Security of supply is another thing. And that's linked to socioeconomic impact. The distinguished professor did what he said. But if you've lived and worked in the Niger Delta, you know that the situation is more complex. There's a feeling of entitlement. And you can even argue that it is right. That the people have some quote-unquote rights. There's honor among thieves. So the truth of the matter is that if you drive from Nembe, or you can't drive, you go by boats, by canoe, from Nembe to Kulama, all across Agay, all those areas. It has not changed in 50 years, 70 years. They are producing oil. What do you want the person to do? The truth of the matter is that they feel quite right. I know an operator now discovered that around his field there were like 8 illegal refineries. What did he do? He didn't bring in the people to go and destroy. He came and discussed with them. And they said that it was costing them 88 million, 10 million naira to set up the business. And so he started negotiating with them to see how he can convert them into part of his workforce, rather than burn and kill. When you burn and kill, they'll just relocate to somewhere else. Why? Because that's their only means of sustenance.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, when you say entitlement, yes, but it hasn't changed in 50 years, 70 years. That's because even what is being taken by force is not going to the people, it's going to a few private pockets. And so that doesn't even give us a solution. But in any case, I do know that the PIA, came about and eventually made it to presidential assent because, it was intended to solve some of these problems. So, Mr. Adigun, I don't know if the PIA has done us that favor. Only yesterday, or 2 days ago, the president of the Senate said, hinted that, perhaps we are going to tinker with it if it's not serving its purpose.
The thing is, the PIA, there's no perfect law in the world. So laws are not perfect. Laws need to be
evolved, yeah.
As things happen, and the laws go around policy changes in Nigeria. So if the policies are changing, then the PIA might be reviewed. But the PIA by itself, it's a very well-written document. It's not the perfect bullet to Nigeria's problem, but the challenge is implementation. It hasn't been well implemented. A lot of provisions in the PIA are being ignored. The purpose of the investment, 21 years to get the PIA, 21 years, millions of naira and dollars and such. Then we get the PIA out, and then we dump it somewhere, right? And go back to default habits, which is the biggest problem. And you know, I was talking about something which the PIA tried to address, what you said as well, those communities, the lack of benefits to those communities. The PIA said, okay, money is coming, there's derivation, we can't see the effects. And when you go to some communities in Niger Delta, you find out the only house that have tin roofs are people involved in illegal oil bunkering. Now, the PIA said, okay, part of your revenue, keep aside through a community trust fund for those communities. So bypassing the states and the government, direct to the community. Now it's new. A lot of companies have set up their own trust funds. I know at least about 8 or 9 trust funds. So again, that will be implemented would allow the community benefit from oil. Because again, it's not all theft is not only a function of people wanting to steal. There are economic issues as well. There's degradation and there's impact. Again, like you said correctly, if you steal oil, it doesn't go to the community. It goes to the people doing it and supports militancy and other issues. But again, you must not take away from the fact that people there as well are captive by the problem of Nigerian state. So the PIA is a good document. Before we start reviewing it, maybe we should implement it properly well first. Now, when implement properly, one of the things I like to say is this. The PIA had 3 concepts. Set out the policy direction of Nigeria, set out who has the agenda, set out the laws implementing and the fiscal framework. Now, the fiscal framework is good. It's one of the best you can see anywhere in the world. Fiscal framework is why people decide to invest. And right now, Nigeria is one of the best fiscal framework compared to any nation. So why are they still not coming in? Because the fiscals are generous, and why are they pulling out? Well, they decided to pull out years ago, before your PIA came out. But for new investors and the patrons, it's a good area. Gas. This government has done very well on gas. This government has done quite well on gas. And gas is growing in expansion. But last point I wanted to say was this. The budget, which you mentioned, I always wonder how they set 1.7 million barrels per day, or the figures. You want to do your budget setting, you do historical facts. If you've never done 1.7, 1.8 in 7 years, on what basis did you set 1.7 million barrels per day? It's an obstacle designed to fail. And that's where the fault comes in. You know what you can do based on your average over past 7, 8 years is 1.2. Then you set a budget of 1.7. And then the irony of it is that 1.2 is not all for Nigeria, which is another thing that happens. If you do 1.2 million barrels per day, yours as a country is probably about 780,000 barrels, because other people that put money in the business will take their own oil as well. I mean, the PSCs, the joint ventures, the service contracts, so it's not all of yours. So there's a problem in that budget framework. Then the third factor is this, which is why I support Engineer's point. Why are you producing crude for sales? Why? For every barrel of crude you sell out of the country, you lose over $1,000 in terms of value addition. Why don't you produce crude for development locally? Have more refineries, give your refineries, supply petrol to West Africa.
But is that not why Dangote came into this scene?
Dangote
yes,
is an export refinery. I think people forget that fact, and I always tell people again, I say it regularly. Dangote is an export-free zone. If Nigeria is buying from Dangote, we are importing.
That's what it translates
to. It does not change the fact of the location. Dangote has an export-free zone license.
Okay.
So even when Nigeria is buying, we're buying as if we're buying from Ghana or Togo. So
is that what it is?
That's what it is. That's one thing people forget in the fact. So it being localized in Nigeria physically, it does not mean regulatory-wise, it's all that. So yes, it's a Nigerian-based company, but it is a free trade zone, and it's an export free trade zone. So Dangote will produce petrol or diesel or aviation fuel and sell to Nigeria as if we're buying from Togo or Benin Republic or Cotonou. Those were part of the agreement. Because otherwise, refineries are not that great returns. 1.1, 1.2, 0.9. It's not a very great investment. It's a marginal business. So he needed that guarantee to ensure that, well, if you're not buying right now, it's market, and he will tell you that himself. He's not Nigeria. He's selling to Europe. Aviation fuel has going to Europe. Who will sell petrol to Nigeria when petrol in Nigeria is 700, 600 naira? And when it is 1718 everywhere, it's $1 internationally. They're selling to Nigeria at 50 cents.
Because the impression we got was, we as Nigerians got was when Dangote finally comes on stream, we will have more supply of, crude and all that. And then, the price of PMS will probably crash.
The question I ask people is,
yes,
are inputs different from other people's inputs? If I sell yam in Lagos and I sell yam in Calabar, is it not the same yam I'm using? He's going to buy crude. He's bought crude. He's bought 6.5 million barrels from America in dollars.
But the private sector input is quite different from the refineries that are being managed by government.
No, it's not this. It doesn't work that way.
Huh?
In fact, Nigerian refineries, in true sense of the word, are one of the most profitable to operate anywhere in the world. And I'm talking anecdotal. I'm talking reality. The refineries margins in Nigeria are very, very high. But the point is this: the product of product prices are determined by two factors: international market prices and your foreign exchange. So if you're producing, if Dangote takes crude at $80 per barrel, puts it in the refinery, how is it going to sell it at 300 naira per liter? How is it going to sell it at international prices? It's going to sell it at the part it can price. Look, a refinery doesn't make money anymore when crude goes beyond $70. It starts making a loss. So it's a marginal business. It's very thin. So people's expression should be dampened and that's face reality. He will sell at the prices that are competitive, but they cannot be less than the prices that he produces them. He will not subsidize production. He's still going to buy the crude. He hasn't got the crude from Nigeria so far. Unless Nigeria sells crude to him in Naira. Now, if you sell the crude to him in Naira, where do you get your foreign exchange from?
All right. And I don't know. Recently, Dr. Kali, we read of of appeals, from Dangote, of what the IOCs, the impacts that the IOCs are trying to frustrate his efforts and all that, and he's had to, import crude and all that. So I'm just wondering, are IOCs also part of our problem, part of the problem in this chain?
Yeah, well, I think it's something to do with competition. They are actually being, competitive. I'm not justifying it because if you are operating, in a country, you have to go by the laws and regulations of that country. But also, on the other hand, it actually tells you the weaknesses in our regulatory system. Okay, as much as possible, the regulatory agencies should be able to shield Dangote, from these problems. But the fact is, the IOCs are actually...
when you say shield, can you expand?
Yeah, shield. What I mean by shield is that, you see, there are laws here. There are laws. There are laws regarding, production. There are laws regarding export. And as a matter of fact, you see, based on the OPEC quota, which is 1.5. That 1.5 does not even include your domestic consumption. Yes, it is outside your domestic consumption. If you can produce 2 million per day, okay, you can actually take that 500,000 for your domestic consumption, and then the 1.5 will be your OPEC requirement, OPEC quota. Okay, so even in that light, the regulatory agencies can actually ensure that Dangote is free from this shackles of competition from the IOCs. The fact is that it's a very weak regulatory system in the industry, such that the IOCs can now play at their own game. But to be honest, also the fact is that Dangote cannot fully rely on supply from the NNPC. He cannot rely on supply from the NNPC, and this is actually a part of the problem, because if you look at it, you see NNPC, Dangote is saying NNPC is not actually giving him the supply that he requires, and he's now moving abroad, to establish new frontiers of supply, and you can't blame him on that. The fact is, for the NNPC, you would expect that at least, they should be able to guarantee the 445, even the 650,000 barrels, possibly, because the NNPC was operating the DSDP, isn't it? Yeah. The direct sales, direct purchase agreement. Now, that direct sales under that DSDP, the NNPC was using 445,000 barrels to swap the 64 million estimated, okay, 64 million liters estimated PMS, requirement, okay, domestic consumption requirement. Now, last year, the DSDP was stopped, isn't it? The DSDP was stopped last year. It was stopped, okay? So where is the 445 that the NNPC was using to swap for 64 million liters of PMS? Where is the 445?
So what I'm getting from, there is a tying of NNPC in this regard. There's a linking of NNPC.
Yeah, these are the shields I was talking about.
So is there is NNPC complicit? Because NNPC also
this is the
has,
shit I was talking about.
Yes.
NNPC cannot ensure the supply, the crude supply that Dangote needs. This is part of the shit I was talking about, and this is what actually causes further altercations, okay, between Dangote and the IOCs.
Yes.
Okay, so if the NNPC can ensure supply, that's the shit I was talking about. If the NNPC can ensure the supply, the crude supply that Dangote requires, okay, that will bring some stability in the industry. Where is the 445? I keep asking. The DSDP 445,000 barrels of crude oil, because the DSDP was scrapped. So you will expect that NNPC will now convert that 445 to Dangote.
Okay, let's put you. Mr. Adigo, you're laughing. Before I know Victor wants to. Mr. Adigo, is NNPC complicit? Again, because we understand there is a partnership between the NNPC and the IOC in all of this.
Let's be truthful about it. The IOC's frustrating me was pure propaganda by Dangote. That's not true. It's impossible. This is being real. You can play politics.
So it's pure propaganda?
It's pure. It's pure undoubted propaganda. Nigeria operates under 4 major agreements. The PSC, right now, is the biggest where we get crude. Of every PSC agreement right now, the declining take it from the IOCs. The government gets 90% of crude production. This is how it works. The PSC, at the beginning, you get high. As it emerges, you get lower and lower. Where we are now, the PSC contracts, Nigeria gets 90 to 95% of crude produce. On the joint ventures, it's the same thing. Now, the reason why joint ventures are scattered is because the NNPC can't meet its own cash obligations. So NNPC gets to the crude. Of 1.2 million barrels produced in Nigeria today, 850,000 goes to NNPC. So who is not giving Dangote crude? Is it the IOC who took a loan to invest in your deep water, who needs to pay it back, who has signed contracts for long-term production? So it's still NNPC, not giving Dangote crude. But again, NNPC itself is constrained by the right of economy. The agreement between NNPC and Dangote was 300,000 barrels per day as part of our own 20% investment in it. That was the contract we signed. Now, 300,000 barrels is only available after we've produced enough. But imagine Nigeria's crude has been used for taking loans. You all know about the loan we took from Afrexim Bank, the 90,000 barrels per day Project Gazelle. We're taking loans for other things. So why does NNPC itself have room to move? And remember again something, government is dependent on crude sales for revenue. So the NNPC itself is a victim of over-dependence of the government on crude sales. And I keep on using what crude sales, because not all industry. So if everybody is depending on crude sales, NNPC has to sell crude. Now, government has made a direction, every crude you sell, remit the money to Central Bank of Nigeria now, don't keep the money anymore. But same NNPC has to bring in petrol at subsidized prices. You know, we keep on lying, there's no subsidy. There's a lot of lie about subsidy regimes. Everybody says, oh, there's no subsidy, but it's a lie. We all know it's a lie. So NNPC
no,
now,
we don't know. Those are your views.
No, not your views.
No, those are your views, because we're not, we once we have data to prove otherwise.
Data is so that anybody can prove that data. It's not even complicated. Look, NNPC brings petrol in. Nobody else brings petrol in. People bring diesel in. People bring language production for. Only NNPC's petrol for the past 7 years. Why? Because I can't bring petrol in at 10 naira and sell at 6 naira. International price of petrol today, you can Google that. $1.10, 94 cents. We're selling 50 cents. That's subsidy now. I mean, why? I mean, you've seen now, in the next few months, if you're not careful, there might be queues again, because the cargo sellers selling to NNPC are not selling anymore because they haven't got their money. So NNPC is burdened by the responsibility of the Nigerian state. And that's one of the things the PI tried to do, to unburden it and free from the burden the Nigerian state has put on it. It's a victim of poor regulation, poor economic governance, and a victim of its own success in the past. So everybody is NNPC. Anything NNPC. NNPC should pay for that. Where's NNPC going to get the money from?
All right. We've talked a lot about NNPC, where we're getting it wrong. Yeah, but where do we go from here? Engineer EE, I'm borrowing a leaf from you now.
Where do you go from here? That's a good one. Well, one thing is this, is again going inwards, is that we need to understand, again, coming from the engineering, pure petroleum engineering perspective, is that we are in a declining reserve. How do we boost our production at minimum cost? First, increase the pie so that we can all share. The pie is shrinking, then there's pressure everywhere. Yeah, good. So, you know, when you produce oil, you are only producing probably 30% of what is actually there. Yep. So when you say I have 100 million barrels in my reservoir, you're only going to produce 30 million barrels. The 70 million barrels are lost. So technology to optimize our production, yeah, existing production, starting with the independent producers, yeah. The first thing we need to do is to have standardization.
Good.
Yeah, standardization. That is, in other words, when you go to Total, go to Shell, go to ExxonMobil, you see there are multiple standards for the same solution. All of them have different pipelines. Interconnectivity of production doesn't happen because everybody has projects, has a budget, submits it to NAPIMS or NIMS, and then it goes that way. So the actual cost, overall cost, is high. Yeah? We talk about aging infrastructure, but the truth of the matter is that there's lack of interconnectivity in our production system, and that's adding a layer of costs and also a significant amount of losses. We talked about pipeline vandalization, but you see, if we have standardization, we have right now very few, at least where land and swamp is concerned. If we're not going to Bonny, we are going to Forcados. Escravos is on his own. But you see, it's on his own. People now barge in. Barging increases the cost significantly because of lack of infrastructure. We now talked about refining. Now, regional refiners, we talked about modular refining, which came up here. Marginal refiners have had very good margins, obviously. You put in the small modular refinery or topping plant right in the middle of your production. You're not going to transport the crude far and go near. So regionally, you should be able to satisfy the demand, the local demand, because you minimize the long-range transportation. So my point is that we need to deal with the problem from both ends of the spectrum.
But even the modular refineries we hear are not producing crude.
Well, they are not producing PMS as we know it. Yeah, they are what I call topping plants. So they essentially extract part of the crude. They don't crack the crude to get your what you call PMS, but they fill a niche. They fill a very important niche, and that is where the niche that gas can fill easily. We have a lot of gases, fair amount of gas flaring. You capture that gas, creates what I call transportation corridors, because the issue is that if you fill your CNG tank in Calabar, how far are you going to go before the thing runs out? So you need to create a chain of refill stations along the way. So create corridors, Calabar to Lagos, Calabar to Abuja, and where you have that, you bring the cost of your transportation and therefore reduce your demand. Reduce your demand, you now have more crude to sell to the market. So
you talked about increasing the pie.
Yes.
To solve a problem.
Yes.
The pie is shrinking.
Yes.
Or we're eating it up. So, to a solution, you increase it. And part of what government did was to increase the pie, in the form of granting licenses, for people to build refineries. And Dangote was one of those. Now, out of the, I don't know how many now, I think over 20 licenses granted so far, we are only hearing of Dangote. So what is happening to the other licensees?
Well, one thing is we need to commend Dangote for taking on the challenge. It's not an easy challenge. And like you talk about the refinery margins as being slim, they are actually very slim. When you add on the inefficiency in our system, you can easily argue that it's negative. So he did make the right choices in terms of making sure to de-risk his project. It had to be export-oriented, no doubt. But there is a potential huge economic spillover of having a Dangote refinery in Lekki. Yeah, people are trained, huge workforce. It helps to support the industry. If we see it as part of our overall industrial strategy for growth, rather than it is Dangote's refinery, it's his problem. We have to see it as a collective national issue. Yes, we have the export arm of our business there. How do we strengthen the regional refiners? How do we get them to start to produce into a pot for which everybody can share? The truth of the matter is, if we see it that way, you can easily see ways in which we can increase that pie. But if we see it as you're on your own, and then everybody tries to find out what is wrong and what's not wrong, he's taking a very bold and, if you like, imaginative step. You can easily argue he saw the numbers and said, listen, if there's 450,000 barrels here being swapped, let me take it and convert it into value. But Nigeria is a dynamic place. So my point is that until we begin to see the problem as collective, having an overall policy, increase the pie, utilize our local content. As I keep saying that because, of course, I come from a local content background, but they add real value. Integrate that into the IOSLs and IOCs, because they also bring value in terms of technology, in terms of even investment, finance, and co. Create modularity in gas, modularity in refining, and integrate that into a national system. We will solve the problem on the short term, and then we'll have sustainability.
Mr. Adugun talked about what could have happened to our expectation if Dangote didn't have a free zone license. Do you think it was wrong to have obtained a free zone license?
No, it was
and
you have to have the bankability of the project. You have to have the bankability. And the key challenge is going to be, if I put this money in here, how will I get the money back? Think about it. So really, putting it in a free zone made economic sense, apart from the fact that there's a lot of heavy lifting. If you've borrowed money before, they will ask you, where's your collateral or where's the seed money? It takes some some guts to do that. Now, but if we put that within the context of the overall industrial strategy, oil industry strategy, then we can see the value add of that refinery and see how it cascades into the rest of our economy. It's very important that we do that. But if we isolate these things, then we're always going to be back into the chop and clean mouth approach, which is everybody's self-interest, you know, and collectively we don't make that much impact. That's true. As a nation, all I want to do is to fuel my car and move from point A to point B. Yeah, and whether the petrol comes from Dangote or comes from a local refinery, it's irrelevant. Yeah.
All right. Let me ask Dr. Akali, is there a chance that industry regulators can collectively, confront the challenges and opportunities just to shape the energy landscape?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, again, regulation is key. It's important, and that even brings us to this question of the sense of entitlement, which was mentioned on this in this program this morning. I think because there is very weak regulation, there is like an overhype of this sense of entitlement. You see, this sense of entitlement is part of the reasons why the industry is declining and is not what it should be. Okay, it cannot be justified. Okay, first, the law is not on the side of that sense of entitlement, because because oil is found in my backyard doesn't mean I own that oil. It doesn't. I actually studied in Scotland and I lived for some time in Aberdeen, but I've never had Aberdonian, okay, claiming that sense of entitlement. Aberdeen is the closest city actually to the North Sea side of the UK, where oil is found. Okay, that's where oil is found. Oil, on the UK side of the North Sea, but you cannot hear an Aberdonian or a Scottish claiming that this oil belongs to me. So, because we have weak regulation, that is why this sense of entitlement has now, started as militancy, and from that militancy, it now, blossomed into oil theft, and general insecurity. And here we are, losing about 3 million barrels of crude oil per day to that violence. Yes, as I said, Nigeria can potentially make 4 million, but here we are at 1 million, at 1.2. Okay, so the rest are being lost because of that violence, because of that sense of entitlement. So the regulators have to step up. Okay, there is, apart from the PIA, okay, which clearly, had the host community fund about 3%, isn't it? They were even asking for it to be increased to 5%. 3% host community fund. You also have the CSR, corporate social responsibility, from the companies. All these are going there. And the more they go, apart from even that, you have the Niger Delta Development Commission. You have the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. You have the Derivation Fund. My friend here said is going is being mismanaged. Okay? It's being mismanaged. This money does not go to the people. There are instances where a company in the Niger Delta will come to say, look, I want to do my CSR. I want to build a bridge. The leaders there will tell them, the chief there will tell the company, look, don't build any bridge. Just give me the money because I know what my people want. You see, so that is not helping the industry. The regulators now, and this even brings us to the issue of the NNPC again. Okay, NNPC, I fully agree, and everybody, most people have been saying this, that NNPC should be unbundled. Okay, it will help the industry. It will help in checking these excesses. I really cannot understand why, when the PIA was being formulated,
into how many
unbundling the NNPC. Well, unbundling the NNPC, at least when you have a strong standalone national oil company, okay, fully into E&P.
Okay, please just hold it there, E&P. We'll get back to continue. Can we take a short break now? We'll be right back.
The government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipments will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Meet lovebirds Jayola and Adama Davies. Their dream of living together as man and wife has finally been fulfilled.
The latest couple in town, Mr. and Mrs. Jaye Davis!
But an invasion by their troublesome families was not a scenario they bargained for. Her mother moves in. His mother shows up with his little niece. Then her younger sister joins the scramble.
You want to stay?
Married life suddenly becomes very complicated even before it started. Follow their story on this channel as they confront every challenge as it comes. Family forever, the story of our lives.
All right, welcome back to the program. Good morning, Nigeria. And I'll just allow Dr. Akali to continue, with his response.
That's what I say. When you have a strong national oil company, purely into E&P, okay, now NNPC operates basically as a joint venture management company, if you ask me honestly, because almost all the fields are on joint venture. And even more worrisome is the fact that, you see, under this joint venture, NNPC is supposed to have the majority shares, but it actually sometimes even goes the other way around, and NNPC ends up having the minority shares because it's not able to actually meet up with obligations under the contract, under the PSC or under the JV. Okay, so the unbundling I'm talking about, and as I said, I was really surprised in the PIA, maybe because NNPC sponsored maybe sponsored the formulation of the PIA. It was not touched. Only the DPR was unbundled into the midstream and downstream and the upstream. NNPC was not touched, and we need that. The unbundling I was talking about is we should have a gas company of the NNPC and an oil company on the NNPC, because you see the commitment, of the government in the gas sector, 209 trillion cubic feet of gas. That's huge, the reserves. Nigeria has huge reserves of gas, but the infrastructure is not there. Okay, 37 billion proven reserves of oil. Okay, second in Africa and 10th in the world of oil reserves. But you see, all these things are not being harnessed. Okay, because the national oil company, which is the hub, okay, is not standing strong. The NNPC should be unbundled. There should be a gas company, okay, and the national oil company, so that we can have more production, capacity. We can enhance the production capacity of the NNPC if we have a strong national oil company purely committed to E&P. We have one actually, the MPDC, but is it really working? Is it really working? Is it really performing? So I think to have a repositioned industry, you have to start with the NNPC. You need to get it right with the NNPC. This rationalization, this restructuring or redesign, whatever we may want to call it, should start from the NNPC.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Akali. Let me ask the engineer here. I don't know why I lost your name. You are not an engineer, that's why. Because I lost your name, Mr. Adibu. But what is it? If we are talking about restructuring the NNPC, what is it about the NNPC that is not going well? What is, for instance, the Saudi Aramco doing that the NNPCL is not doing? Because you look at the figures in 2022 Q1, Saudi Aramco posted a gross revenue that is about 5,307% more than the NNPCL's revenue for the same Q1 2022.
Well, let me defend NNPC. And I would say this with all sense of responsibility. Given the circumstances NNPC is operating under, it is doing well. NNPC has been unbundled. Let me say something. One of the things the PI did was put NNPC under Kama. So NNPC right now is a Kama company. The shares are held by MOPI, Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, and MOFI, Ministry of Finance Incorporated. So it's purely to profitable. The same NNPC, as I said earlier on, you are asking to import petrol at cheaper than sale price. They've been doing this for 7 years. NNPC has been carrying the burden of subsidy, of petrol subsidy, for the past 7 years in Nigeria. I'm not exaggerating, these are figures you can find in their figures. How can they compete with Aramco? Then when you look at Aramco is doing, Saudi Arabia does 10 million barrels per day at $9.10 as COP. Cost of production in Nigeria can range from 28 to 34 or 18, depending on the field you're thinking. So NNPC, under circumstances, is not doing badly. I'm not saying it's profitable, and I agree totally with Prof that the NNPC is part of the problem. And the problem is not the law in this case. The laws are enough. It's the perception of the law, and how even NNPC perceives itself. Every time I say publicly or anywhere that NNPC thinks it's a regulator, or I get challenged, oh, what do you mean we issue regulations? But you do. When I talk about a state of emergency in crude oil production, it's not your job. You're a commercial company, but you take the burden. Everybody still sees NNPC as NNPC without limited of the past.
Now you are limited. You are NNPC limited,
and you should be under a regulator.
Should be under a regulator. Okay, let's quickly look at because the purpose of our conversation is to see how we can the roadmap to increasing our production capacity, and there are quite a number of things that are draining our input. Oil theft is part of it, and oil theft. Again, we're looking at aging facilities and all that. So what can we quickly do to the issue of oil theft?
Okay, it's a good question, and I think oil theft, as in so many other very, I would say, illegal activity, is not just an event; it's a chain. It's a system. It's a system of give and take. But I'll give you an example. About 10, 12 years ago, 14 years ago, when the first marginal fields came up, there was a marginal field operator that went a different way. Then it was very popular to sign an MOU and do CSR. And this marginal field company said, you know what, let's do a trust fund. Yeah. Now, it took about 3 to 5 days of engagement with the community. They brought all the levels of the community, all the stakeholders, from market women and co, to a room in a hotel, and they spent almost a week convincing them that the trust fund was going to benefit them more than a cash and carry business. You see, where you just build a town hall and co. They resisted it, but eventually they signed the agreement. Now, I tell you that operator has had no shutdown. No single shutdown in 14 or 15 years, not one. There is a trust fund, They created a company for the community. The youths are there. There's competitive bidding, and when the last time I know they were opening, cutting tape, yeah. The number of projects that have come up, the community has street lights, has tarred roads, has schools, it's amazing. Now, at the time that this company was signed this agreement, all the other operators in the neighborhood called this company and said, don't do it, you're going to create problem, it's going to be blah, 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 blah. But today, there are no issues. There is a conflict resolution committee populated by the thing. There's an independent judge, retired judge, who is the chairman of the trust fund. The money goes at source into that account. When the PIA was passed, the community came, that was the first protest they came. Please, leave us with our trust fund. Because what they were getting from the trust fund was better, more defined than what was in the PIA.
So invariably,
yes,
that addressed the issue of thieving of our oil.
Why? Because when there's less oil produced, their money reduces in their trust fund. So when anybody tries to bunker, the community is the one who
take responsibility. They take ownership of that.
That is it.
But is that really happening? Because the individuals who do this look at what comes to them. They don't care about the trust fund.
You see, we're all from the village. Yeah. Let's face it. So even if you're in town, you're from the village. You know what it means. There is a communal psyche that will stop these things from coming. Mm-hmm. When the people who bunker come to a particular area, you know the first thing they do? They bring rice, milk, and drop it in the village square. It's an economic force. It's not, they don't go, you say they go and take for themselves. They don't. They help to spread the local economy. They give food. They help to sustain. So the community gives them cover. This is the thing. The community gives them cover to do what they're doing.
So have they stopped giving cover since the trust fund was set up?
No. My point is this, is that the community knows the individuals who are involved in this thing. They tell them, please avoid this area. Why? Because the money will reduce if they bunker. If they shut down, the trust fund shuts down. So there's a collective ownership
of that.
Of
and whether Victor, the point you're trying to say is, I mean, at least it reduces to the barest minimum.
Yes.
You know, the issue of oil theft within that.
I'm just worried that the figures haven't increased.
That's the principle of the host community.
That's right.
That's what we adopted into the PIA. What he said, and what the company is talking about, and he's not exaggerating. You see, the point about the theft in Niger Delta is not based on one issue alone.
Yes.
But the socio-economic issues, which is the biggest issue. I went to one community. I was telling them about dangers of crude thefts and about using crude for things. One man told me, they said, "Na person when they are alive, they get disease." Now that sank home to me. That was my first involvement. This was 2008-07 of going to this community. And I realized, I said to me, any house you see here, we get tin roof. Now people will steal. If people feel impact, they are more inclined to safeguarding the assets. Mm-hmm. And like you said, in those community bill as well, in the PIA, it works on the principle of the more they produce, the more you benefit. So it's in your interest to protect. And you see, this communities you've been around too, they're interconnected. A pipeline doesn't just go from space into space. It goes to communities. For it to be broken and everything, a community has to give an accent.
Precisely.
There is that thing of folding your hands and looking. It's the same thing with all bands of terrorism we have, as Prof said. So the law is there to deal with it, but it's one part of it. The second issue is what we're trying to do now. You must bring investments. You held on investments because you said the idea is to increase crude oil production. When a country says we're tinkering with our laws, like we did in Nigeria, 21 years to pass a PIA, nobody can plan on uncertainty. If I'm asked to develop a model for anybody, and then I don't know what the fiscal laws will be, or what the tax will be and other issues will be, I won't be able to tell an investor how much returns will be. So we've dealt with that now. Fiscals have been passed now. It's been dealt with. But then there's the whole investment climate again, which is beyond what we are doing. I am happy. When I was coming here today, I read that the Ajip Owando deal has been concluded. We're waiting for Seplat, Mobil, we're waiting for Renaissance, Shell. The more investors realize I can put my money in and put my money out, the better for us. And like engineer said, Nigeria is a country where we have the capacity to run the industry. What we don't have, it might be the finance, but capacity in terms of technology, capacity in terms of production, we have all that locally. So the more local people get into the space, the more people divest. I don't worry about that. Nigeria's export capacity to countries in the world. There are very few countries where you go to in oil and gas. He was in Aberdeen. Aberdeen has a lot of Nigerians. I mean, it's the first de facto place you go for a master's in oil production. But if you talk about Aberdeen, for instance, UK's dependence on crude is 1.3%. For Nigeria, for foreign exchange is 90%. For revenue is 38%. That dependence is what creates this socioeconomic problem. So we're all caught up in a circle.
Okay, let's quickly look at another issue again, which is loss, oil loss, apart from the oil theft, because of mode of transporting. You talked about what really gets to the market, and which is insufficient, and that's because somewhere along the line, some are stolen or some are missing and all that. And I was reading recently where the CM Melekiari, was talking about barging, thinking about using barges as a way of transporting and crude. I don't know what you think. He said it's not normal, but in other climes, it's one of the ways of transporting crude. What do you think, Dr. Akari?
Yeah, it's actually one of the options, obviously. But you think you see the aspect actually there is. I think the major problem there, part of the problem is the metering system. Okay, the metering system is a big problem in the industry because you find out that you have actually staff, you have the regulators, representatives, at the wellhead, but you actually find out that what comes out, the recorded production is not consistent. It's not actually what is produced. Okay, so there is a very big problem with the metering system, and I think that is one area that the country is shortchanged, if you like, by these operators. Okay, so and apart from that, also, you see, as I said, most of the fields are actually operated under PSCs, under joint ventures. So you find out that the NNPC doesn't really have control over this production. Now, if you are in a joint venture with someone, okay, 60-40, for example, at least you should be able to know the production. Okay, you should be able to have your own figures of what that operator produces. Okay, you should be able to say, okay, look, this is, and that is why you have your representative at the wellhead. Who monitor this metering, who monitor this output. Okay, now that output is faulty. That metering system is faulty. Okay, is even manipulated. By the way, or it's not even done. Okay, and you now want to build that operator. How do you build the operator when you don't know what he is producing? NNPC, cannot, in all, sincerity, be able to establish the daily, a dependable daily production, figure for these operators. They cannot. What actually happens is the operator simply, comes to say, look, I have. This is what I produce, or this is your commitment, and this is what I've done. NNPC signs and says, okay, you understand. So at the end of the day, that 60-40, as I was saying initially, that 60-40, 60 for NNPC, 40 for the company, actually goes the other way. NNPC now takes 40 or 30, because NNPC is not meeting up with obligations. So there is a very big problem with the metering system, and unless we do something about it, we will not be even able to establish our own court in the JV, because we don't know. NNPC cannot establish, doesn't know what these operators are producing.
And
they don't have the numbers.
That's why we're having conflicting.
I wanted to ask, just before, because we're almost out of time, is there now, since we are talking metering now, is there a place for technology in the value chain, across the value chain of oil production, as a way of mitigating theft, reducing it, to the barest minimum, and increasing production therefore?
Yes, in terms of metering, the whole metering thing is a handshake, fiscalized from one to the other, and eventually gets to the terminals that you have. There was a discussion of the barging thing. Barging is because of the toll gates. Just like to drive on your roads, it takes you 2 weeks to get to Maduguri from Lagos, because of the many toll gates. And both virtual toll gates and real toll gates. You understand what I mean? Yeah. So that is why barging is expensive. Yeah, because there are so many toll gates. For an operator to barge from one point to another, they're going to settle militants, they're going to settle community, they're going to settle Navy, they're going to settle the roadways transport, they're going to settle so many things. So by the time you add up the numbers, it becomes untenable. There was an operator that was barging to Esclavos for many years. They were producing not too much, but they were successfully doing those barging. But because barging becomes an issue or a solution to a problem, you don't have a pipeline is broken, you have to find a way to get your truck to market. So it's a symptom of the overall challenge. Metering, there have been many initiatives. The old DPR launched it, NNPC has their own metering thing, virtual metering, virtual satellite monitoring, all of those things are there. But the basic fiscalization methodology, for example, in the DPR, old DPR, NEPRC, NNDPRA guidelines, is simply down to a dipstick. If I move barrels from here to there, I'll check where it started from, I go to that end and check what arrived there, and then I reconcile the numbers. But if you think about it, a lot of our infrastructure is not optimized. It's very significant, I can tell you that, because most of the IOCs built their own networks in parallel to each other. So you have Ajip and Total in the same neighborhood. One is going one direction, the one is going in a different direction.
So we can't take deliberate steps.
The shell fields go to Bonny.
Technology?
Ajip, you can optimize easily. Last week, somebody was trying to add some numbers. They were doing an inventory. And he says, it's taking us 1 week to do it. And I said, wait a minute. He said, let me show you something. Give me your paper where you have written all the numbers. I added everything. I took a picture of it. And I asked the AI model, see, please convert these things into numbers. And there I showed him what was taking 1 week was taking a few seconds. AI or whatever can optimize our production infrastructure. Plug it in and it will optimize it.
All right. I think it's a fine place to leave the conversation. But this conversation never really ends because the issues keep staring us in the face. For today, well, let me thank you, Engineer Emeka Ene, who is BOT Chair of the Society of Petroleum Engineers of Nigeria, and former Chairman of PITAN and CEO of the Oil Data Energy Group. We thank you very much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Let me also thank Mr. Ademola Henry Adigun, an energy consultant that supports the energy sector in the areas of governance and capacity building, and has supported quite a number in terms of policy development in the oil and gas sector. Well, thank you for your time and thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Let's also thank Dr. Alkali, Dr. Abubakar Alkali, who is a petroleum engineer and a senior lecturer at the Bayes University here in Abuja. We thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, that's the program. This is where we have left it off today. Tomorrow is another day. We urge you to enjoy your day while thanking you for joining us.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. I thank you very much for joining us, and I particularly want to say thank you to Ahmedu Michael. Please keep spreading the good news about the NTA until they can't beat the rich. Bye-bye.